Imagine 1888 Edinburgh. Gas lamps flicker along narrow streets, their light fighting to pierce the suffocating fog that rolls in from the Firth of Forth. Carriages clatter over cobblestones. Steam hisses from pipes embedded in the ground. And everywhere, the hum of invention lingers like a second heartbeat to the city. Edinburgh has become a marvel of Victorian ambition, a city where brass and iron fuse with progress, and where the dreams of inventors take physical form. But progress has a shadow. Behind the glowing windows of laboratories and workshops, the boundaries of what should be created are pushed further each night. And when the clock strikes midnight, whispers travel down the alleys, whispers of something walking that should not walk, of a machine that does not need a master to obey. The sound is faint at first, gears grinding in the distance, a mechanical heartbeat growing closer. Then, a scream. Sharp, fleeting, cut short before it can echo. And just like that, silence. Only the fog remains, hiding what stalks beneath it. By day, Edinburgh bustles with life. Gentlemen in tailored coats tip their hats. Ladies glide across Prince's Street in gowns adorned with lace. And children chase each other past the looming Gothic silhouette of the Scott Monument. The air smells faintly of coal smoke, engine oil, and perfume. Yet beneath the elegance, unease coils like a serpent. The newspapers whisper of accidents no one can explain. A dock worker crushed as though by invisible hands. A seamstress found lifeless with brass dust on her clothing. A constable who vanished after following strange clanking noises into the night. The official word is silence. Scotland Yard and the local constabulary refuse to acknowledge anything unnatural. But the citizens know better. In taverns, speculation runs wild. Is it a deranged machinist testing his creations? Some demonic spirit possessing the new inventions of steam? Or worse, has human ingenuity finally crossed a threshold that should never have been breached? On a particularly frigid night in November, mist swallowing the lamplight whole, a lamplighter named Angus McCrae heard it. The metallic rhythm, a cadence too steady, too deliberate to be human footsteps. He paused mid-step, flame trembling in his hand as he looked down the empty street. There it stood, or perhaps lurked. Half shrouded by mist, its frame glinted under the gaslight. Brass plating, intricate cogs visible beneath its chest. Eyes that glowed with a faint, unnatural amber. Not a statue, not a man, something in between. Before Angus could cry out, the machine turned its head with a precise snap, as though gears dictated the motion. Then, silence. The automaton simply melted into the fog, vanishing with a hiss of steam. Angus fled, dropping his lamplighter's pole, breathless and white-faced, as he swore to anyone who would listen what he had seen. Few believed him, but those who did stopped walking home alone at night. The legend spread, taking on a name, the Clockwork Killer. Though no one had yet seen it strike, the aftermath told enough. A body found in a workshop with marks too precise, as if cut by blades not wielded by human hands. Another victim discovered in a narrow alley, face frozen in horror, lungs filled with a strange, oily residue. And always the calling card, a scattering of brass filings near the corpse, and the faint, lingering smell of scorched metal. Witnesses claimed that, before discovery, They had heard the faint grinding of gears and the hiss of venting steam in the distance. Children whispered about it in schoolyards. Adults pretended to laugh at the superstition, but their hands shook when turning keys in their doors after dark. Invention had turned into nightmare, and though no one dared admit it, Edinburgh was being stalked, not by a man, not by a ghost, but by something born of their own pride and progress. As weeks dragged on, the murders, or accidents, as the officials insisted, continued. The streets emptied earlier with every passing night. Gas lamps flickered, more like warnings than comforts. People swore the fog had grown thicker, heavier, as if the city itself sought to conceal the thing that prowled its veins. Rumors hinted at an inventor, a brilliant recluse named Dr. Alistair Greaves, who once lectured on automata at the university, but withdrew after funding for his experiments was cut. Whispers claimed he had continued in secret, building something that would walk and think on its own. But Greaves had not been seen in years. His townhouse stood dark, its windows shuttered, its chimney forever cold. Still, when the gears ground at night and screams punctured the fog, people imagined the unseen hand of Greaves guiding his creation to slaughter. Whether true or not, one fact remained certain. Edinburgh's golden age of invention was tarnished. The city of light and progress had birthed a shadow, and the shadow had teeth made of brass and steel. The first confirmed victim was found on a fog-choked morning in Old Town, where narrow alleys twisted like the coils of some monstrous serpent. The body of a young tailor, his face frozen in a silent scream, was discovered sprawled across the cobblestones. Brass filings glittered faintly on his coat, and the peculiar smell of scorched metal lingered in the air. Detective Eliza Sinclair crouched beside the body, her gloved fingers brushing against the residue. She had seen countless crimes, but nothing like this. The precision, it was unnatural. Each wound, each mark, carried the signature of a mind that operated without hesitation, without remorse. And yet, it was not human. The faint hiss of venting steam seemed to echo in her ears as she rose, shivering despite the cold. This isn't a man, she whispered, though she knew no one could hear her over the distant clatter of a passing carriage. Word of the murder spread like wildfire. Edinburgh awoke to fear, its citizens whispering in every tavern, market, and workshop. Shopkeepers barred their doors earlier. Children refused to walk home alone, and even the bravest gentleman murmured of a machine that kills. Rumors grew more vivid with each retelling. Some claimed the automaton's eyes glowed like molten brass. Others swore they heard its gears grinding just beyond the reach of their lanterns. Tavern-goers debated endlessly. Was it an avenging spirit? A mechanical monstrosity born from some twisted inventor's mind? Or something that no human could comprehend? Detective Sinclair listened to these stories, noting the common threads. Brass filings, steam-scented air, the precise, deliberate nature of the attacks. Something mechanical, something unrelenting stalked their city. And for the first time, she realized that conventional policing might be powerless. Forensics, such as it existed in 1888, could offer little explanation. No fingerprints, no footprints. Only fragments of brass and the occasional smear of oil. Sinclair observed the patterns closely. A triangular arrangement of filings here. A small coil of wire there. Hints that the machine had a method to its madness. Dr. Wallace, an inventor consulted by the police, leaned closer to examine a cluster of fine gears near the scene. These were not mere trinkets. he said softly, voice trembling. This automaton, whatever it is, it was built for precision, to follow patterns, to execute a plan. Sinclair felt a chill creep up her spine. A plan? Machines do not plan. Machines obey. Yet this thing moved with intent, and every movement spelled death. Some brave or foolish citizens claimed to have glimpsed the automaton in action. A lamplighter swore he saw a figure step silently from a mist-laden alley, brass plates glinting, eyes glowing. The shape moved with eerie fluidity, limbs articulating like clockwork, before disappearing as suddenly as it had appeared. A young seamstress insisted she heard gears grinding behind her while sewing at her workshop late at night. She looked up, nothing, but the air smelled of scorched metal, and the shadows danced unnaturally along the walls. These accounts, though fragmented and contradictory, painted a single terrifying image. Edinburgh was being hunted. Even the constables, men accustomed to crime of every stripe, began to question their own senses. Some refused to patrol alone. Others refused entirely, citing a presence no man could face. Among the whispers, a single name recurred: Dr. Alistair Greaves. Once celebrated for his lectures on automata and mechanical engineering, he had vanished from public life years before. Some said he had gone mad, consumed by his obsession with giving machines life. Others believed he had died, leaving only rumors of his final experiments. Detective Sinclair, reviewing the evidence, noted the sophistication of the automaton. No mere workshop experiment could produce such lethal precision. Whoever or whatever was behind this had genius-level understanding of mechanics. And one thought chilled her more than the others. The killer may be only the beginning of Dr. Greaves' legacy. Night fell, and the gas lamps struggled against a fog that seemed thicker than ever. Windows were barred, doors bolted. The city of Edinburgh, proud of its innovation and mechanical marvels, now trembled in fear of its own creations. Somewhere in the mist, a metallic footstep echoed. Hiss, grind, silence. And for those few who dared peek into the alleys, a fleeting glimpse of amber eyes glinting through fog. Edinburgh held its breath, trapped between fascination and terror. A machine designed to advance human achievement had become their nightmare. And as Detective Sinclair stared down the dark streets, she understood the truth. The Clockwork Killer had only just begun its march. Detective Eliza Sinclair moved cautiously through Edinburgh's alleys, her lantern casting quivering shadows across the slick cobblestones. Each step echoed, unnaturally loud in the fog-laden silence, as if the city itself whispered warnings of the horrors that lurked beyond the light. Reports of missing citizens had grown too frequent to ignore. Families whispered of loved ones vanishing without trace. Workshops were abandoned overnight, doors swinging open as if inviting the unknown inside. Sinclair followed the clues: brass filings, faint trails of oil, and the lingering hiss of venting steam. Each discovery confirmed her worst suspicion. The Clockwork Killer was not random. It was calculating, intelligent, and unstoppable by any ordinary means. Night after night, Sinclair patrolled the city. Gas lamps flickered, shadows shifted, and every alley seemed alive. She began to feel the city watching, every corner potentially hiding the mechanized nightmare. On one evening, a narrow lane near the university yielded a dreadful surprise. A child's discarded toy, a miniature automaton, was scattered across the cobbles, gears strewn like a warning. And then, from the shadows, came the sound of deliberate, metallic footsteps. She froze, heart pounding, lantern shaking. A figure emerged, brass plates gleaming, joints whirring in perfect harmony, amber eyes fixed on her. Sinclair barely had time to duck as the automaton passed, leaving behind only a faint trail of steam and the scent of scorched metal. It had been aware of her. It had studied her. And she realized with a cold clarity, she was not hunting a creature. It was hunting her. Back at the precinct, Sinclair pored over sketches, witness notes, and mechanical fragments. Patterns emerged. Triangular formations of brass filings, recurring coils of wire, subtle imprints that suggested intelligence beyond any known automaton. Dr. Wallace, the inventor consulted by the police, examined the fragments carefully. "This is no ordinary device," he murmured. "The precision, the balance, the movement. It is as if it were alive, guided by a singular mind. Whoever built this must be brilliant or mad." Sinclair's thoughts turned inevitably to Dr. Greaves. As November bled into December, the fog seemed to grow heavier each night. Edinburgh's once proud streets now resembled a labyrinth of shadows and mist. People stopped leaving their homes after dark. Shops shuttered early, and even the bravest constables patrolled in groups, lanterns held high, eyes scanning every shadow. Sinclair walked these streets alone, each step a test of courage. Every whisper of steam, every distant grinding of gears made her flinch. And with each night, she began to sense something more disturbing. The city itself had changed. Edinburgh had always prided itself on innovation. The gas lamps, the mechanical engines, the automatons that delivered mail and performed menial tasks, all symbols of progress. Yet Sinclair now saw the terrifying flip side: human ambition unchecked. The city's creations, designed to ease life, had birthed something capable of horror. It was not merely a machine. It was a reflection of their hubris, a warning etched in brass and oil. The more the city pushed the boundaries of invention, the more it invited disaster. And the Clockwork Killer was proof that intellect without conscience, ingenuity without foresight, could manifest terror beyond imagination. Sinclair could not ignore the connection. Every clue, every mechanical fragment, every pattern led her back to Dr. Greaves. Reclusive, brilliant, possibly insane, the inventor had vanished from public life. But perhaps he had never truly left. She imagined him in his darkened workshop, gears turning, steam hissing, a single mind orchestrating the movements of the nightmare that now stalked Edinburgh. Was he testing his creation, or had he lost control entirely? Sinclair did not know, and in the darkness, she felt the truth settle over her like a frost. Genius and madness often walk hand in hand, and she had stumbled into their path. The city's residents whispered constantly, suspicion flaring in every conversation. Friends eyed each other warily. Strangers' footsteps sounded like threats. Even the mundane creak of a door or the hiss of a distant pipe was suspect. Sinclair, walking alone through an abandoned market square, realized with a jolt that the gears grinding in the distance had no rhythm of any carriage or machinery she knew. It was deliberate, watching, waiting. Somewhere in the fog, the Clockwork Killer moved, And she understood, with growing dread, that soon there would be no more hiding, no more safety, only the relentless march of a machine designed to kill. The night air was thick with fog, curling like living smoke around Edinburgh's Gothic rooftops. Detective Eliza Sinclair crept along a narrow bridge spanning the Water of Leaf, lantern trembling in her hand. Somewhere in the shadows, she heard the faint hiss of steam, the grinding of gears too precise to be human. Then, a movement, a flash of brass, an angular silhouette with glowing amber eyes emerged from the fog. The automaton. It paused, tilting its head in a mechanical mimicry of curiosity, as if testing her resolve. Sinclair's breath caught. This was no mindless machine. Its limbs articulated with inhuman precision, and every movement radiated intent. The ground beneath her seemed to vibrate with the rhythm of its approach. She drew a small revolver, the weapon trembling in her hand. "Stay back," she shouted, voice cracking. But the automaton did not hesitate. It stepped closer, gears whirring, steam venting in calculated bursts. Its presence was absolute, unfeeling, unstoppable. The encounter lasted only moments, yet it felt like hours. Sinclair realized the automaton did not simply attack. It observed. Each movement was measured, each pause deliberate. There was strategy in its motion, as if it understood more than any human could fathom. She fired a single shot, the bullet ricocheting harmlessly off polished brass. The automaton remained unfazed, moving past her without a glance, its glowing eyes fixed ahead. Where it had passed, the air smelled of scorched metal and oil. Sinclair stumbled back, heart racing. She knew then that conventional weapons would not stop this nightmare. Survival depended not on firepower, but cunning, foresight, and understanding the mind, or minds, behind it. Back at her office, Sinclair examined the mechanical fragments left behind from prior encounters. Each component revealed an intelligence far beyond anything she had seen. Clockwork joints articulated with unnerving fluidity. Steam vents were calibrated with surgical precision. Sensors, if they could be called that, reacted to heat, sound, and movement. It was not merely a weapon. It was a sentinel, a predator, designed to hunt with the efficiency of nature itself. But the precision of human engineering, whoever had built it, had combined genius and obsession into a single lethal entity. Dr. Wallace had warned her, this is more than a machine. This is a mind of metal, and it is patient. It will wait, and when it strikes, it will leave nothing to chance. Through careful analysis of crime scenes, Sinclair began to discern a terrifying pattern. Victims were not random. They were all connected by one factor. Those who had witnessed Dr. Greaves' lectures or expressed skepticism of his work. It seemed the automaton was not merely killing. It was enacting judgment. The realization hit Sinclair like a physical blow. Dr. Greaves' creation was selective, calculated, deliberate. The automaton's spree was not chaos. It was a methodical execution of the inventor's will, carried out with mechanical impartiality. Edinburgh had not been cursed by chance. It had been chosen, marked by the ambitions of a single man who had sought to transcend mortality through his creations. As panic spread, the citizens of Edinburgh took desperate measures. Streets were barricaded. Inventors and engineers hastily devised traps and countermeasures. Lanterns burned brighter, alarms were set, and constables patrolled in groups, their nerves fraying under the ever-present tension. Yet, the Clockwork Killer moved like a shadow, slipping past barriers, dismantling obstacles with uncanny efficiency. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. An unseen predator in the mists of the city. Sinclair realized that survival depended on more than courage. It depended on understanding, on predicting the movements of a mind that was neither wholly human nor entirely machine. The hunt had become a test of intellect, endurance, and nerve. Whispers led Sinclair to an abandoned warehouse near the outskirts of the city. Inside, shadows danced across brass instruments, gears, and partially assembled automata. Diagrams sprawled across tables, hinted at the genius and madness of Dr. Greaves. Among them, Sinclair found sketches of the Clockwork Killer itself, detailing every joint, every sensor, every vending port. Annotations in the margins revealed the inventor's philosophy: efficiency, precision, judgment. And then she noticed it. A cryptic note scrawled in hurried script. They will understand when it is too late. The city will learn the cost of human arrogance. The meaning was clear. The automaton was not only a killer, it was a message, a grim parable, written in brass, oil, and blood. As she left the warehouse, fog curling like smoke from unseen fires, Sinclair felt the weight of inevitability pressing down. The Clockwork Killer would strike again. Its pattern was clear, its purpose relentless. And somewhere, hidden behind layers of metal and genius, Dr. Greaves' shadow loomed, guiding its every move. Edinburgh had become a chessboard, and Sinclair, along with every citizen, was merely a pawn. The gears of retribution had begun to turn, and soon the city would feel the full force of a nightmare born from human ingenuity, turned monstrous. Edinburgh awoke to a city forever changed. Streets that once echoed with the clatter of carriages now lay silent, save for the occasional hiss of steam venting from unseen pipes. Windows were shuttered and doors bolted, as if the city itself sought to protect its inhabitants from the unseen horror that had stalked them for weeks. Detective Eliza Sinclair walked carefully through an alley near the old town, noting the brass filings glittering in the dim morning light. They seemed almost ceremonial now, like markers left to remind the city of its terror. The people spoke in hushed tones of the Clockwork Killer, a specter of brass and steel whose presence lingered even in daylight. It was a nightmare that refused to leave, etched into the memory of every witness, survivor, and gossiping neighbor. The city had endured, but at a cost that no one could measure. Fear had become a permanent resident in Edinburgh. The workshops and laboratories bore the marks of the automaton's passage. Machines lay broken, gears scattered, and the air smelled faintly of scorched oil and metal. Inventors feared their own creations, hesitant to continue the work that had birthed such horror. Sinclair visited Dr. Wallace, the inventor who had advised the police. "We have reached a precipice," he said, voice low. "Our ambition to create intelligence, to surpass our own limitations, has unleashed something we cannot control. What we thought was progress became a predator." Indeed, the city's obsession with innovation, its pride in mechanical marvels, had created the monster. The Clockwork Killer was not simply a murder machine. It was a reflection of humanity's hubris, a lesson in precision, patience, and the dangers of unchecked genius. Though the automaton had vanished into the fog once more, its creator's shadow lingered. Dr. Alistair Greaves remained a phantom figure, in the city's consciousness. Brilliant, elusive, and terrifyingly influential. Sinclair pored over the sketches she had found in his workshop, trying to understand the mind behind the machine. Each drawing revealed an obsession with order, precision, and judgment. There was no cruelty in its design, only purpose, a mechanical morality applied with unerring consistency. Yet the question haunted her. Had Greaves intended to stop his creation? Or had he designed it to carry out a final lesson, one that would continue long after he disappeared? The answer remained elusive, hidden beneath layers of brass, oil, and steam. Life in Edinburgh did not return to normal. Tavern conversations were dominated by mechanical whispers, speculation about where the automaton might strike next, and fearful recounting of stories. Children were forbidden to roam freely, and adults avoided the streets after dark. At the docks, workers hesitated to unload cargo. In the markets, merchants sold lanterns brighter than ever before, hoping to hold back the shadows. Fear had woven itself into the fabric of everyday life, creating a city both alive and tracked by its own anxieties. The Clockwork Killer had become more than a machine. It had become a legend, a reminder of what happens when invention outpaces caution. Sinclair began to reflect on the deeper lesson of the horror that had swept through Edinburgh. The Clockwork Killer was not just a story of murder and mystery. It was a parable for the dangers of human ambition. Technology, while a marvel, held the potential for disaster if left unchecked. The automaton's calculated precision served as a mirror to the city itself. Every invention, every advancement could be turned into a threat. Edinburgh had survived, but the memory of brass gears grinding in the fog and amber eyes glowing in the dark would never fade. And Sinclair could not help but wonder, was this story of horror truly confined to the 19th century? Or was it a cautionary tale for all times? Perhaps the echoes of Greaves' creation still lingered in the minds of inventors, engineers, and visionaries who dared to challenge the natural order. Late one evening, Sinclair returned to the warehouse where she had first found Greaves' sketches. The fog pressed against the windows like ghostly hands, and the distant sound of gears grinding made her heart race. She noticed a faint glow beneath a pile of blueprints, a single, small automaton part, polished and shining, almost like a calling card. Steam hissed from its seams. It was not moving, but its presence was undeniable. A note lay beside it, scrawled in familiar handwriting. The lesson is not over. Watch the gears turn. And with that, Sinclair felt the unsettling truth settle over her. The Clockwork Killer had not vanished. It had only paused, biding its time. The nightmare born from human ambition was far from finished. The fog that had become Edinburgh's constant companion thickened into an almost tangible wall. Lanterns cast pale, trembling circles of light, and the distant clang of gears echoed like the heartbeat of some colossal, hidden beast. Detective Eliza Sinclair moved cautiously through the alleys, every sense alert. Her boots slipped on damp cobblestones, her breath visible in the cold night air. Somewhere in the shadows, the Clockwork Killer lurked, patient, calculating, inexorably precise. Tonight, she told herself, she would finally confront the nightmare. In the courtyard of an abandoned textile mill, Sinclair caught her first true glimpse of it. The automaton emerged from the fog, its brass plates gleaming under the flickering lanterns, its amber eyes fixed on her with inhuman focus. each gear and joint moving silently, yet with deliberate intent. This was no mere machine. This was judgment incarnate, a creation of steel and steam, with the intelligence to anticipate human fear and hesitation. Sinclair raised her revolver, heart hammering, and called out, "Stop! I will not let you take another life." The automaton paused, its head tilting slowly, almost as if acknowledging her defiance. Then, with a hiss of vented steam, it advanced. Not recklessly, but with the patience of a predator that knew its prey would falter. Sinclair circled, seeking cover behind crates and discarded machinery. Every movement of the automaton was precise, calculated. She noticed something she had not before. Subtle markings on its joints. Tiny etchings that seemed almost like runes, or perhaps a signature. A realization struck her like a lightning bolt. The Clockwork Killer was not acting randomly. Every movement, every strike was guided by logic, by the mind of its creator, Dr. Alistair Greaves. And if she could understand the pattern, anticipate the design, she might survive. She studied the automaton, noticing the rhythm in its steps, the predictable arcs of its limbs, the way steam hissed after each movement. It was as if the machine itself were a riddle, and solving it meant life or death. Sinclair's thoughts drifted to Greaves' workshop, the scattered blueprints, the cryptic notes. They will understand when it is too late. Now she understood. Greaves had created more than a machine. He had created a lesson, a parable in brass and oil. The automaton was not merely a killer. It was a mirror of human ambition, of pride, of the dangerous allure of invention. Each calculated strike reflected the hubris of those who thought themselves masters of their creations. Sinclair's fear transformed into clarity. If she could match the machine's logic, anticipate its design, perhaps she could survive the night, and perhaps put an end to Greaves' shadow once and for all. Using the pattern she discerned, Sinclair led the automaton through a narrow passage, forcing it to pause and adjust its precise movements. She maneuvered through the mill, each step guided by observation and intuition. With a final, calculated move, she triggered a stack of metal crates to fall, blocking the automaton's path temporarily. The machine hissed, gears grinding, but could not advance without recalibrating. Sinclair slipped away into the fog, lungs burning, heart racing, knowing she had survived, but only by a hair's breadth. She realized that this was not the end. The Clockwork Killer was still out there, still moving, still hunting according to the logic of its creator. In the following days, Edinburgh began to recover. Yet the memory of brass and steam haunted every corner. Citizens whispered of sightings, faint hissing in the night, and shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Sinclair reviewed her notes, her sketches, the automaton's patterns. She understood that Greaves' creation had become something more than a machine. It had become a legend, a living puzzle that would endure beyond the immediate terror. And then she found a single polished cog lying on her desk, glowing faintly in the lantern light. No note, no warning, just a small piece of brass etched with a delicate spiral. A message or a promise. She could not tell which. The city slept uneasily, gas lamps flickering like the pulse of a restless giant. Somewhere in the fog, gears ground and steam hissed. The Clockwork Killer was not gone. It had only paused, waiting for the next moment, The next mistake, the next opportunity. Detective Sinclair gazed into the night, lantern in hand, knowing that the story was far from over. And as she turned to leave, the faintest whisper of steam carried through the alleys, as if the machine itself were speaking. The lesson continues. Edinburgh had survived, but the shadow of brass, gears, and unrelenting logic lingered. A nightmare poised to return at any hour.